Welcome to Heart Over Gold, the channel where love, kindness, and humanity shine brighter than any fortune. In today's story, Maxine, a kind-hearted cleaner, crosses paths with Lucas, a wealthy but empty millionaire. Their brief connection blossoms into deep love, but Lucas walks away in pursuit of success. Years later, Maxine, now a single mother, encounters Lucas again only to uncover a twist that will change everything they thought they knew about love and sacrifice. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments, and keep up with our latest stories. Once upon a time, in a bustling city filled with towering skyscrapers and lavish lifestyles, there was a young woman named Maxine. She was a kind soul, with a heart as pure as gold. Despite the cold concrete world around her, she always smiled, helping those in need with whatever little she had. Maxine worked as a part-time cleaner in the luxurious apartments that lined the city's wealthiest streets. She wasn't rich, not by any means, but she had something far more valuable, an unwavering belief in kindness, compassion, and love. Then there was Lucas, a successful millionaire with a smooth, confident air about him. He had everything a man could desire: wealth, power, status, yet his life lacked meaning. He was surrounded by people who admired him for his riches, but no one truly saw him. He had become disconnected from the world, drowning in meetings, deals, and opulence. That is, until he met Maxine. Their paths crossed one fateful day when Maxine was cleaning the lobby of a high-rise building. Lucas, in his usual rush, was on his way out when he noticed her. Her eyes sparkled with something rare, something real. He had grown accustomed to people who smiled only for the sake of appearances, but Maxine's smile was different. It was genuine. She didn't know who he was, and that fascinated him. They began talking, and in the short span of those conversations, Lucas found himself captivated by Maxine's warmth and kindness. They shared stories of their lives, his of luxury and success, hers of struggles and triumphs in the small things. She spoke of her dreams of a world where kindness was the currency and where love wasn't something to be bought or sold. Lucas was intrigued. He had never met anyone like her, someone so grounded in the simplicity of life. He soon found himself visiting the building more often, just to see Maxine, to talk to her, and to learn from her. As the weeks went by, their connection grew deeper. They spent more time together, and slowly, Lucas's walls began to fall. He realized that all the money in the world couldn't bring him happiness. The emptiness he had been feeling for so long started to fade as he discovered a love that was simple yet profound. Maxine was everything he never knew. He needed someone who could make him see the beauty in the ordinary, and he fell for her hard. But life, as it often does, had its own plans. One day, Lucas received a phone call, a business opportunity that was too good to pass up. The offer required him to leave the country for several months, and the thought of being away from Maxine was unbearable. But the promise of more wealth, more success, and the opportunity to build something even bigger clouded his judgment. His heart, he knew what mattered, but his mind, driven by ambition, told him to go. So, he left. Maxine, devastated by his sudden departure, felt abandoned. She was heartbroken, but she continued her life, as she always did, quietly, with grace. Over time, she accepted that Lucas had chosen his path, and though it broke her, she didn't hold any resentment. She continued to help others, kept working, and kept smiling. But her heart was heavy with the absence of the love she had so deeply cherished. Months passed, and Maxine's life took another unexpected turn. She discovered she was pregnant, a new chapter filled with both excitement and uncertainty. The news brought her joy, but also the weight of being a single mother in a world that sometimes lacked compassion. She found herself struggling, working long hours as a cleaner to make ends meet, all while preparing for the arrival of her child. One rainy afternoon, while Maxine was sweeping the streets near the same high-rise building where she had once met Lucas, she noticed a familiar face across the streets. It was Lucas. His gaze was fixed on her, a look of shock and disbelief on his face. He couldn't believe his eyes. There she was, not the woman he had known in the luxurious lobby, but the woman he had left behind, with a broom in her hand, sweeping the very streets he had once walked on without a second thought. Maxine's heart skipped a beat when she saw him. She hadn't expected to ever see him again, and the sight of him now, after all this time, stirred up emotions she had long buried. She stood still for a moment, unsure of what to say. Lucas crossed the street slowly, each step heavy with guilt. As he approached, Maxine looked up at him, her expression calm. But there was a sadness in her eyes that spoke volumes. "Maxine," Lucas said softly, his voice filled with regret, I never should have left. I should have stayed with you. Maxine's heart clenched. She took a deep breath and replied, Lucas, I don't blame you for leaving. You made the choices you felt were right. I understand. But what about this? Lucas gestured to her growing belly. What about the life you're carrying? What about everything you've had to go through alone? Maxine smiled gently, her eyes soft with understanding. I've never been alone, Lucas. I've always had love. I've always had kindness to give. And that's what has carried me through. My child will know that love. That's what matters. Lucas felt a wave of emotion wash over him. In that moment, he understood the depth of Maxine's strength, her compassion, and her unwavering ability to love despite the hardships life had thrown her way. He realized that love wasn't something to be earned or bought, it was something that grew in the most unexpected places. In the quiet moments of kindness and generosity. I was so focused on my success, Lucas said, his voice trembling. I thought that would bring me happiness, but I see now that I was wrong. It was you. It was always you. Maxine placed a hand on his arm, her touch gentle and forgiving. It's never too late to make things right, Lucas, but you must first learn what truly matters. Success is nothing if you don't have love to share it with. Lucas nodded, tears welling up in his eyes. He finally understood. In that moment he made a vow to himself and to Maxine. He would change. He would be there for her, for their child. He would rebuild the life he had once turned his back on, not with riches, but with love, kindness, and compassion. And so Lucas returned to Maxine's side. He left behind the world of wealth and ambition and chose a life filled with meaning, a life built on the foundation of love and care. Together they raised their child in a home filled with laughter, warmth, and the understanding that true happiness comes not from what you have, but from who you love and how you give. In the end, it wasn't the riches that made them wealthy, but the love they shared, a love that healed the past, nurtured the present, and promised a future filled with hope and compassion. And that, in the end, was the greatest treasure of all. As time went on, Lucas worked tirelessly to rebuild his life, but this time, it wasn't for the purpose of gaining more wealth or status. It was for Maxine, their child, and the new life they were creating together. He learned that the most important things in life couldn't be measured in numbers or material possessions. They were the moments of shared laughter, the quiet mornings with Maxine as she prepared breakfast, and the peace of knowing that he had made the right choice. On the months that followed, Lucas began to devote himself to causes that Maxine had always believed in: helping others, spreading kindness, and giving back to the community. He used his resources and influence to start programs that assisted struggling families and supported single mothers who, like Maxine, were working tirelessly to make ends meet. He helped to open a shelter for those in need, something Maxine had dreamed of for years but never had the means to make a reality. He also found ways to partner with local schools, providing scholarships to children who needed it most. But it wasn't just his wealth that made a difference, it was his heart. He spent every day showing people what it meant to live with kindness and compassion, not because it was expected, but because it was the right thing to do. But Maxine too blossomed in ways she hadn't expected. Her confidence grew, knowing that the love she had shown to the world, to Lucas, and now to their child, had been returned tenfold. She had always believed in the power of love and kindness, but now her belief was strengthened by the man who had once walked away but had now returned with a heart full of remorse and gratitude. Together, they became a symbol of transformation, of how love could heal the deepest wounds, and how second chances could change lives. Their love story spread through the city, not because it was extraordinary or because it was tied to wealth and fame, but because it was real. It was a love grounded in understanding, in the willingness to change and grow, and in the belief that no matter how many times you fall, you can always rise again. Their child, a beautiful little girl with bright eyes and Lucas's determination, became the embodiment of their shared values. As she grew older, she was taught the importance of kindness, of seeing the world through the eyes of others, and of always choosing love over fear. Maxine and Lucas made sure she knew that wealth wasn't the measure of success. Love, compassion, and making the world a better place was. Lucas often found himself reflecting on the day he had seen Maxine sweeping the streets, pregnant and alone. It was a humbling moment that had forever changed him. If he had never seen her then, if he had never realized how far she had fallen, he might have never found his way back to her. He had always assumed that success came with sacrifice, but now he knew better. The true measure of success wasn't in what you could achieve for yourself, but in what you could do for others. He would often walk with Maxine through the streets of their community, hand in hand, watching how their little girl interacted with the world, curious, kind, and full of wonder. He was no longer the man who had left Maxine behind. He was the man who had returned, not just to her, but to himself. Every day, he woke up grateful for Maxine, for the life they had together, and for the second chance he had been given to make things right. And he promised himself that he would never take that for granted again. As the years passed, Maxine and Lucas's story became a reminder to the world that no matter how much you have or what you lose, love and kindness would always be the most valuable things you could give. They had started with nothing but their hearts, and they ended up with everything they ever needed. Their love, built on forgiveness, understanding, and deep compassion, became a legacy, a reminder that even in a world that often seemed driven by greed and ambition, true happiness came from sharing, from giving, and from loving each other unconditionally. And so, they lived, not in the shadow of wealth and success, but in the light of love, kindness, and compassion, forever bound together by a story of second chances and the power of a love that could never be broken. Years passed, and the legacy of Maxine and Lucas's love story grew beyond their own family. It touched the lives of everyone they encountered. What had started as a simple act of kindness, Lucas noticing Maxine sweeping the streets, pregnant and alone, had spiraled into a ripple effect that reached every corner of their community. Maxine, now a mother of two, had opened her own small cafe, not for the money, but as a place for people to gather, connect, and share stories. It wasn't a fancy place, but it was full of warmth and love. Every morning, she served coffee to the elderly woman who came by after her morning walk, the young couple who always ordered extra sweetener for their drinks, and the children who came in to buy a warm chocolate croissant after school. Maxine's cafe became a haven, a reminder that community and connection mattered more than anything. Lucas often helped around the cafe after his work in the community programs. He would wash dishes, clean tables, and chat with the regulars. It wasn't about maintaining his image as a wealthy man. It was about living a life grounded in humility, understanding that no task was too small if it contributed to the well-being of others. He had found true peace in these small, humble moments. Their home, once a symbol of wealth and luxury, was now filled with laughter, joy, and the sound of children playing. It had transformed into a place of love, not extravagance. They had a garden where they grew vegetables together as a family, and every Sunday, Lucas would host a small gathering for their friends and neighbors. There, they would share meals, stories, and laughter, fostering bonds that ran deeper than any transaction or business deal ever could. It was clear to everyone who came that the most precious things in life weren't the material possessions that adorned their home, but the love that filled it. One evening, as Lucas sat by the fireplace, watching Maxine read a book to their children, he reflected on how far he had come. His life was no longer defined by the things he owned or the titles he held. It was defined by his actions, by the way he chose to treat others, by the way he loved and supported Maxine, and by the example he set for their children. He had become the man he had always wanted to be, the man Maxine had believed he could become. One day, as Lucas and Maxine walked through the city, now transformed by the programs Lucas had helped create, they came across a mural on a building. It depicted a woman sweeping the streets with a child by her side, and above her, the words love, kindness, compassion were written in bold letters. It was a tribute to Maxine, who had taught the city that even in the face of hardship, love could be a guiding force. Maxine's eyes welled with tears as she read the words. She never expected anything like this. She never wanted recognition. For her, the work she did every day was simply about living a life of meaning. But seeing the mural was a beautiful reminder of the impact one person's love and kindness could have. Lucas squeezed her hand, and they stood there for a moment, together, remembering the days when their future had seemed uncertain. The mural was a testament not to fame, but to the power of ordinary acts of kindness, acts that, over time, could create extraordinary change. Maxine turned to Lucas, smiling through the tears. "I never imagined my life could look like this. You and me, here, together." Lucas smiled back, a deep, contented smile that reached his eyes. "I never imagined it either, but I'm so glad we're here now." And they were. They were right where they were meant to be, to people who had found love in the most unexpected of places and had built a life together grounded in the values that truly mattered. In the end, they didn't need to prove anything to anyone. The richness of their life came from their commitment to each other, to their community, and to the idea that love, kindness, and compassion were more valuable than anything money could buy. As the years passed, their children grew, inheriting not only their parents' love but the wisdom they had gained from their journey. They too would grow up knowing that the world didn't revolve around success or material wealth. It was about how much love you gave, how much kindness you showed, and how much compassion you shared. Maxine and Lucas continued to live their lives in the same humble, giving way they always had. Their story, one of love and redemption, inspired those around them to look beyond their own struggles and focus on the love they could offer to others. And in that, they created a legacy that would live on long after they were gone. In their final years, as they sat together on the porch of their home, watching the sun set over the horizon, Lucas turned to Maxine. His voice was soft but filled with the wisdom of a lifetime. I used to think success was measured by the things you own, by the power you have, by the world you can conquer. But now, I know the truth. Success is measured by the love you give, the compassion you show, and the way you make the world a better place for those around you. Maxine, holding his hand, looked at the life they had created, the family they had built, and the community they had touched. Her heart was full, and she nodded. You taught me that, Lucas, and I'm so grateful for it. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, Maxine and Lucas knew that their love story, one of second chances, redemption, and the power of love, would continue to inspire those who heard it for generations to come. In the end, they had discovered that the greatest treasures in life were not the things they had gained, but the love they had shared and the kindness they had given. They had built a life full of meaning, full of love, and full of the belief that no matter what life threw at you, love, kindness, and compassion would always lead the way. As the years continued to unfold, Maxine and Lucas's love story became something of a beacon of hope, not just for their family, but for the entire community. People spoke of them with admiration, not because they had amassed wealth or fame, but because they had found something far more valuable. They had found a way to live with purpose, to live for each other, for their children, and for the world around them. Their children, now teenagers, grew up with the same values instilled in them. Lucas and Maxine made sure to teach them the importance of empathy, kindness, and selflessness. They would often gather as a family in their cozy living room and share stories of their day. The children were encouraged to talk about their experiences and reflect on how they could help others. It wasn't uncommon to hear them talk about a classmate in need, or a neighbor who was struggling and how they could make a difference. One spring day, as Maxine and Lucas walked hand in hand to the community garden they had started years earlier, Maxine stopped to admire the flowers they had planted together. The garden had flourished, just as their love had, and it became a space where people from all walks of life could come together to share in the simple beauty of nature. This place, Maxine said softly, brushing her hand over the petals of a blooming sunflower, it's like our life together. We started with nothing, and over time, with love, care, and patience, it grew into something beautiful. Lucas looked at her, his heart swelling with affection. You've always had the ability to see beauty where others might not. That's why I love you so much. Maxine smiled, her eyes full of warmth. And you've taught me to believe in second chances, to never give up, and to always trust that love has the power to heal even the deepest wounds. Their walk through the garden was a quiet moment of reflection. As they strolled, they spoke of the future, their children's dreams, their hopes for the community, and the legacy they hoped to leave behind. They talked about the importance of teaching future generations that success wasn't about what you had, but about who you were, how you made others feel, and the impact you left on the world. One day, as Maxine and Lucas sat together on the porch, watching their children play in the yard, they received a visit from an old friend, a man named David, who had been part of Lucas's life back in his corporate days. David had witnessed Lucas's transformation firsthand and had always been somewhat skeptical of the changes, but after years of watching from a distance, David had finally come to see that Lucas's journey was one of true growth. Lucas, Maxine, David said, sitting down beside them, I've been meaning to come by. I've seen the way you've turned your life around. You've both created something incredible here. Lucas smiled, but it was a smile filled with humility. It's not about what we've created, David. It's about the people we've been able to help along the way. David shook his head, not quite believing what he was hearing. I know, but still, it's remarkable. You've shown me what real success looks like. It's not about the money. It's not about power. It's about love. It's about compassion. And it's about giving without expecting anything in return. Maxine placed a hand on David's shoulder, her voice soft, but firm. The truth is, David, when you start giving love and kindness freely, you don't even notice the impact it has on the world around you. It just becomes part of who you are. It's not a choice, it's a way of life. David sat in silence, reflecting on her words. He had spent years chasing power and wealth, thinking it would fill the emptiness he felt inside. But now, as he saw the way Maxine and Lucas lived, he realized that true fulfillment didn't come from climbing the corporate ladder or accumulating wealth. It came from being present for the people you loved, from offering a helping hand, and from living each day with a heart full of compassion. Over the years, Maxine and Lucas continued to nurture their family, their community, and their connection to one another. The love they shared only deepened as they grew older, and their home remained a place where love, kindness, and compassion thrived. On their wedding anniversary, many years after they had first met, Maxine and Lucas found themselves sitting under the stars in their backyard, reminiscing about their journey together. "Do you remember the first time we met?" Maxine asked, her voice soft with nostalgia. Lucas chuckled, his eyes sparkling with affection. "How could I forget? I was so caught up in my world of ambition and success, and you were sweeping the streets, pregnant, and completely unaware of who I was." Maxine smiled. "I didn't care who you were, Lucas. I only cared about who you could be, and I knew, deep down, that you were more than the life you were living." Lucas took her hand in his, a profound sense of gratitude filling him. "You saved me, Maxine. You taught me that love was more important than anything I could ever achieve on my own. You helped me see that happiness comes not from what you have, but from who you love and how you treat others." As they sat there, wrapped in each other's arms, the soft breeze brushing against their faces, they realized just how far they had come, how much they had grown, both as individuals and as partners. Their love had endured every trial, every hardship, and every mistake. It had been tested, but it had never faltered. Instead, it had only grown stronger with time. And as the stars above them twinkled like little diamonds in the night sky, Maxine and Lucas knew that their journey was far from over. They still had so much more to give, so much more love to share, and so much more compassion to offer. Their story would live on in their children, in the community they had helped build, and in the hearts of everyone who had witnessed the power of love and kindness to transform lives. In the end, it was clear they had discovered the most important truth of all, that love, when given freely and without expectation, was the greatest gift of all, and with it, they had created a legacy that would last forever. As Maxine and Lucas's love continued to deepen over the years, their journey became a living testament to the transformative power of love, kindness, and resilience. Their home was no longer just a house, it was a sanctuary, a place where love was constantly nurtured, and where the lessons of compassion were passed on from one generation to the next. Their children grew up with the same values that had shaped Maxine and Lucas's relationship from the very beginning. Their son Matthew showed an incredible sense of empathy for others. He often volunteered at local shelters and helped organize charity events for the less fortunate, all while excelling in his studies. Their daughter Lily had a keen sense of justice and was always standing up for what was right, whether it was for her friends or for causes she believed in. She had inherited her mother's love for nurturing others, and it was clear that she, too, would go on to make a lasting impact in the world. Maxine and Lucas were incredibly proud of their children, but they were equally proud of the ripple effect their actions had created in the community. The programs Lucas had started, the shelters, the scholarships, and the opportunities for the underprivileged, had flourished. The community was thriving because people were learning that success wasn't just about individual achievement, it was about coming together and lifting each other up. One day, Lucas received a call from an old friend, who now worked with a global organization that helped fight poverty worldwide. "Lucas, we've heard about the incredible work you've been doing in your community," his friend said. "We've been looking for partners who truly understand the importance of compassion and giving back. Would you be interested in joining us on a larger scale? We want to spread your message of kindness and help change lives on a global level." Lucas paused, overwhelmed by the gravity of the offer. He had spent so many years focused on his small community, on his family, and the local causes he cared about. But this was something bigger, something that could potentially change the world in ways he hadn't imagined. He looked over at Maxine, who was sitting across from him, her eyes filled with understanding. She had always supported his dreams, no matter how big they seemed. This time, it was no different. "Let's do it," Maxine said, her voice unwavering. "The world needs more love, more kindness, more compassion. If we can make a difference, even on a larger scale, we have to try." And so, they did. Maxine and Lucas began working with the global organization, sharing their story and helping to implement programs that focused on community-driven change, social equity, and empowerment. They traveled to different countries, speaking at conferences, meeting with leaders, and supporting local projects aimed at fighting poverty, hunger, and inequality. Their work took them to places they had never dreamed of visiting, from rural villages in Africa to bustling cities in Southeast Asia. They saw firsthand how kindness, when shared on a large scale, could change the trajectory of entire communities. While the work was often difficult, Lucas and Maxine never wavered in their belief that the heart of any transformation was love. In every community they visited, they worked side by side with local leaders, creating partnerships that were based on trust, understanding, and mutual respect. It wasn't about imposing their beliefs on others, it was about empowering people to take charge of their own lives and supporting them in any way they could. The couple's own children, Matthew and Lily, joined them on some of their trips, witnessing firsthand the difference their parents were making in the world. They quickly learned that their family's work was about far more than just charity. It was about creating sustainable change, inspiring others to care for one another, and showing the world that love, no matter how teaching, could be the most powerful force for good. The more Lucas and Maxine worked to spread their message, the more they realized that they hadn't just built a legacy for their children, they had created a movement. The idea that love and kindness could change the world was taking root in communities all over the globe. They had become living proof that compassion wasn't just an ideal, it was a way of life. Back home, as they spent quiet evenings together, Lucas often reflected on how far they had come. He thought about the days when he had been so lost, consumed by the pursuit of success. He thought about the pain of leaving Maxine behind, the guilt that had weighed on him for so long. But as he looked at the family they had built and the lives they had touched, he realized that every step, every moment, had led him to this place of peace. "You know, Maxine," Lucas said one evening, his voice filled with awe, "if someone had told me all those years ago that we would be doing this, changing the world together, I wouldn't have believed it. But I do now. I see the impact we've made, and I see how much more we can do." Maxine leaned in, resting her head on his shoulder. "We always knew that love was the answer, Lucas. We just had to learn how to share it. And now we're doing it together." In that moment, Lucas realized that the real success wasn't in the number of countries they had visited, or in the accolades they had received. It wasn't even in the legacy they would leave behind. It was in the lives they had touched, the hearts they had healed, and the love they had shared. As they sat in the quiet of their home, watching the stars twinkle above, Maxine and Lucas knew that they had found something more valuable than anything they could have ever imagined. A life filled with purpose, grounded in love, and shared with the people they held dear. And though they had come a long way from the days when Lucas had walked away, they understood now that the greatest journey of all was the one they had taken together hand in hand, spreading love, kindness, and compassion across the world. It was a journey that had no end. For as long as there were people in need of hope, they would continue to give, to love, and to change the world, one act of kindness at a time. Their story, now known far and wide, had become more than just the tale of two people who had fallen in love. It had become a symbol of transformation, of how love, when shared freely and without expectation, could heal not only individuals but entire communities, nations, and, ultimately, the world. And as Maxine and Lucas's love continued to ripple through the world, it became a legacy that would last long after they were gone. A reminder that the simplest acts of kindness can change everything. As the years passed, Maxine and Lucas's love continued to flourish, not just in the quiet, everyday moments, but in a deep, passionate connection that never waned. Their bond was more than just a foundation of kindness and compassion. It was a passionate love that had been forged in the fires of hardship and reborn in the glow of mutual understanding. Their days were filled with love, laughter, and moments of intense connection. Even after all the years they had spent together, every touch, every kiss, felt as electric as it had the first time they met. They never let the demands of life overshadow the affection they shared. Every evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, they would find a moment to be alone, often on their porch, where they could simply be themselves. One evening, after an exhausting day of meetings and outreach work, Lucas came home to find Maxine in the garden, her fingers gently brushing the petals of a newly bloomed rose. She had always loved roses, and as Lucas stood there, watching her, he realized that she, too, was a symbol of love, one that had blossomed with patience, care, and devotion. The years they had spent together were like the careful tending of a garden, and it had only grown more beautiful with time. "Maxine," he called softly, his voice thick with affection. She turned around, and as their eyes met, the world around them seemed to fade into the background. Without a word, Lucas walked toward her, the urgency of his steps matching the thundering beat of his heart. Maxine smiled as he approached, sensing the heat of his desire. She knew, as always, that his love for her burned with a fierce intensity that never faded. He took her hands in his, pulling her gently into his embrace. "I don't think I tell you enough how much I adore you, how much I love you. You've changed my life in ways I never imagined possible." Maxine's breath caught in her chest, her heart racing at the intensity of his gaze. She had always known that Lucas was a man who would give everything for the ones he loved. But in that moment, standing there in the garden, surrounded by the roses they had planted together, she realized that his love for her was not just something that had survived the passage of time. It was something that had only grown stronger, more passionate, and more consuming. "You don't need to tell me," she whispered, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "I feel it every day. I feel it in the way you look at me, in the way you touch me, in the way you love me. With all your heart, I always have." The raw honesty in her voice was a balm to Lucas's soul. He pulled her closer, his lips crashing against hers in a kiss that was both tender and urgent. It was a kiss that spoke of everything they had been through, everything they had fought for, and everything they had become. It was a kiss that spoke of passion that had never dulled, no matter how many years had passed. Maxine responded with equal fervor, her hands threading through his hair as the kiss deepened, as their bodies pressed together, their hearts beating in perfect synchrony. Their connection was undeniable, electric, and as the world around them fell away, it was just the two of them lost in the timelessness of their love. After a long while, they pulled back, their faces flushed, their breaths coming in quick gasps. Lucas rested his forehead against hers, his heart still racing, his pulse thundering in his ears. "I want you, Maxine," he murmured, his voice thick with passion. "I always have, and I always will." Maxine smiled, her eyes dark with desire. "Then, make me yours, Lucas. Make me yours in every way. You always have." And with that, they moved inside, the night unfolding in a passionate embrace that seemed to echo their entire journey, a journey of love that had not only survived, but had flourished, deepened, and become more powerful with each passing day. Their love was not just about affection, it was about connection, about soul-deep intimacy. It was the kind of love that burned with desire and tenderness, that knew no boundaries, no limits. It was a love that had been tested, had endured trials, but had always emerged stronger, more fierce, and more passionate. In the quiet moments, when they were alone, Lucas would sometimes look at Maxine and marvel at how she had completely transformed his life. She was his anchor, his light in the darkest times, and his greatest love. He often told her, "You are the fire in my soul. You're the reason my heart beats. Without you, I would be lost." Maxine would smile softly at his words, feeling the depth of his love wash over her like a tide. She had always known, deep down, that Lucas was her one true love, the man who understood her better than anyone else, the man who loved her fiercely and completely. They shared more than just physical intimacy. They shared their hearts, their hopes, their dreams, and even their fears. Their passionate love was not just a fleeting desire but a deep connection that transcended the physical realm. It was a bond that could not be broken by time, distance, or any challenge they might face. It was a love that was rooted in respect, in trust, and in the unwavering belief that they were meant to be together forever. As the seasons changed, Maxine and Lucas's love continued to burn bright, even as they grew older. They no longer needed grand gestures or extravagant displays of affection. Their love was in the quiet moments when they held hands as they walked through the garden, when they sat side by side watching the sunset, when they whispered sweet nothings to each other as they drifted off to sleep. Their passion for each other never waned. It was a fire that continued to burn strong, even after the years had passed. And through it all, they never took their love for granted. They knew that their connection, the one that had started with a simple act of kindness, had turned into something much more profound. It was a passionate love that not only withstood the tests of time but thrived because of it. It was the kind of love that made them feel alive, every single day, and reminded them that the most beautiful things in life were the ones that came from the heart. And so, Maxine and Lucas continued their journey, their passionate love as vibrant and alive as it had been when they first met, forever entwined, forever burning brightly in the heart of the world they had helped to create together. Their love had become the greatest adventure of all, a journey of unshakable devotion, deep passion, and a bond that nothing could ever break. Years went by, and Maxine and Lucas's love story continued to inspire everyone they met. Their bond, built on a foundation of kindness, passion, and unwavering commitment, had blossomed into something that transcended ordinary understanding of love. They had built a beautiful life together, one where their children had grown into compassionate, strong individuals, and their community had flourished. But just when it seemed like their love story had reached its peak, fate had something else in store. It began subtly at first. Lucas started to feel unwell. It started with tiredness, which he chalked up to the long hours they had been working for the global initiatives they had partnered with, but it soon escalated into something more concerning: dizziness, shortness of breath, and a sharp pain in his chest that wouldn't go away. After several trips to the doctor, Lucas was given the news that shook him to his core. He had a rare aggressive heart condition, whose doctors gave him a limited amount of time, just a few months before the disease would take its toll. The news was devastating, but Lucas remained composed. He had lived a full life, one that was full of purpose, love, and meaning, and he knew he had given everything to those he loved. When Maxine learned of his diagnosis, she was heartbroken but resolved to make every day count. She continued to support him, their passionate love and connection growing even stronger. Every moment was precious, and they embraced it with everything they had. But as time passed, the weight of Lucas's illness became harder to bear. The life they had worked so hard to build together was suddenly threatened, and Maxine found herself struggling to imagine a future without him then. On the final day that Lucas was able to get out of bed, he took Maxine's hand and looked into her eyes, his expression soft yet determined. "Maxine, I've made a decision," he said quietly. "I've loved you with everything I am, and I will continue to love you, no matter what happens. But there's something you need to know, something I never told you." Maxine's heart skipped a beat. She had always known Lucas as the open, loving man who shared everything with her. But this felt different. This felt like a secret that was weighing on him. "What is it, Lucas?" she asked, her voice thick with emotion. Lucas took a deep breath and whispered, "The day I walked away from you, I thought I was doing it for all the right reasons. I thought I was pursuing something bigger. But Maxine, the truth is, I didn't just leave because of my work. I left because I thought I was protecting you from the truth that I had a heart condition even then. The doctors knew about it, but they said it wasn't something to worry about for a while. I thought if I stayed, you'd spend the rest of your life taking care of me, and I couldn't let you do that." Maxine's breath caught in her throat as the truth hit her like a thunderclap. "You left because of your heart condition. You were afraid of burdening me." Lucas nodded, his eyes filled with sorrow. "I was afraid that if I told you, if I didn't leave, you'd stay with me out of pity or guilt, and that's not the kind of love I wanted you to have. I wanted you to have a love that was full of life, of joy, not one of sacrifice and hardship. I thought I was doing what was best for you." Maxine's eyes filled with tears as the realization hit her. She had always known there was something more to the story, something Lucas had never told her, but never could she have imagined this. She had spent all these years thinking that the pain of his leaving had been about him not loving her enough, about their love not being enough to hold him. But now she understood. Lucas had loved her so much that he had been willing to walk away, to endure the pain of separation, just to give her the chance to live a full life. And the twist, the unexpected twist, came when Maxine realized the truth behind his words. She felt a jolt of understanding. All these years, their love had been one of passion, of deep connection, but it was also a love shaped by sacrifice. The man who had walked away from her had never truly abandoned her, not in the way she had believed. He had been saving her from the burden of knowing the truth, saving her from the agony of watching him decline. "You didn't need to protect me, Lucas," Maxine whispered, her voice shaking with the weight of the revelation. "I would have stayed. I would have loved you through it all." Lucas smiled softly, tears brimming in his eyes. "I know, my love. I know now. But I couldn't ask you to do that. I couldn't let you carry that weight. So I walked away, thinking that you'd have a better life without me." Maxine leaned in and kissed him, her heart full of love and sadness, of understanding and grief. "You were wrong, Lucas. You should have stayed. We would have fought through it together, just like we've fought through everything else." In that moment, their love had come full circle, and the truth was both a bitter pill and a sweet revelation. Maxine's heart broke for the years they had lost, for the pain Lucas had endured alone, for the moments of joy that had slipped away. But as she held him close, she also realized something profound. Love, no matter how much it hurts, was never wasted. Their love, despite all the pain and sacrifices, had been beautiful, and now it was time to honor it. Lucas passed away a few months later, surrounded by Maxine, their children, and their loved ones. In the end, They had no regrets. Maxine's love for him had never wavered, and as she stood by his side in his final moments, she whispered to him the words she had always longed to say. I always knew, Lucas. I always knew you loved me. The plot twist of their love story was not in the moments they had together, but in the truth of what Lucas had done. He had sacrificed everything out of love for her, even when it seemed like he had walked away. And in that final twist, Maxine found peace knowing that love had always been the driving force in their lives. No matter how complicated, no matter how difficult, it had always been worth it. Their love, filled with passion, kindness, sacrifice, and truth, would live on in their children, in the community they had built, and in every heart that had witnessed their story. And though Lucas was gone, his legacy of love remained powerful and everlasting.